start things off with a general comment from Jerry. As I'm sure everybody here knows, Jerry has been managing director of USA Basketball's men's national team since 2005. This is the fourth time he's assembled an Olympic team. So Jerry, I thought maybe we start off some general comments from you, talk about what you like maybe about the roster and some of the challenges you faced, as this was an unusual year with the postponement and everything else that was going on.
Thanks, Craig, and good morning or afternoon, everyone. You know, he mentioned that this is my fourth go at this, and it's really my swan song, if you will, in that when this Olympics is over, Grant Hill will be replacing me. And I couldn't be more thrilled to have him be that person. When Coach K and I put things together back in 05, 06, we talked about building infrastructure that would carry on after we're gone. And I believe that's really what's transpired. USA Basketball is as strong as it's ever been. And I'm very happy with that. Having said that, there's work to be done, and that is one more goal, and that is the Olympic efforts in Tokyo coming up in just a few weeks. And so, yeah, it's been a tough way to put things together. When COVID hit, the postponement of the Olympics for at least a year, no one quite was sure about what would transpire and when. The compactness of the two NBA schedules back to back changed things a great deal. I think ultimately it had some impact on injuries that have transpired in the league. And so, you know, you deal with the cards that you're dealt. And I think with the great efforts of our organization, I think we've put together a strong team to represent the United States. And so it's exciting for me always to be involved in putting the team together. And I think this year we have a blending of players with experience, international experience, some medal experience, and then new blood, which is always important. So with the staff we have and the commitment that I believe this organization has, we're looking forward to a terrific, not time, but a terrific opportunity to be successful. And trust me, that's our goal. There's one goal in mind, and that's to bring back the gold medal. And so with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Jerry. Let's start with Tim Reynolds, please.
Thanks, Craig. Hi, Jerry. Good morning out there.
Hey, Tim. Good morning.
Good morning. Jerry, when we were in China, I remember Kobe spoke before the medal round, and he said that the easy days were over, that he thought the world has caught up. How accurate do you think that is in the international game, or do you kind of look forward to maybe disproving that a little in the next few weeks?
Well, only time will tell, Tim. I will say this: basketball is a game where one or two players can make all the difference in the world. And the difference in game time, for example, a 48-minute NBA game versus a 40-minute international game is a big difference. Because in an NBA game, 48 minutes, you have time to come back. You might have 2 or 3 runs. And there's usually runs in every game. Sometimes in a 40-minute game, you run out of time. And on any given night, anything could happen. We suffered our only defeat against Greece back in 06, our first defeat, which was a very difficult one to take, but we learned from that. We really did. And it proved a point. On any given night, a group of guys who hit some threes, make their free throws, and the other team goes cold, you can lose with an all-star studded team. And so you have to be prepared. You have to be ready. Don't take anything for granted. And I think that's where leadership takes place. That's where Coach Pop and his staff will be an important ingredient. We'll see. We'll find out after the Olympics just how far people have come or didn't come. So we're looking forward to it.
Next up, we'll go with David Aldridge, and then Mike Walters is on deck.
Jerry, how you doing, sir?
Hey, David.
Hey, wanted to ask you a couple of things. Number one, hindsight's always 20/20, but how much do you think the year delay impacted the team that you have put together? Do you think it would be a very similar team if you had been able to go last year, or did it completely overturn the team that you put together?
Well, if you subscribe to the theory that because of the compactness of the two NBA schedules, which may have led to maybe some injuries that might not otherwise have taken place, then yes, the pool was affected. Mm-hmm. I think there's 12 players actually, in our larger pool of players who really couldn't go, where their bodies had to heal this off season. Or are suffering from existing injuries. Yeah. And so the pool was affected. The good news is we're very deep. We have a lot of great players in the NBA. We have a lot of great players in this country. And so it's a matter of tapping the right players to replace those who weren't able to participate.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry. Mike, you're up, and next up on deck would be Mark Berman. Mike, you're on mute, I think.
Hi, Jerry. I wanted to ask you specifically about one player, Jeremy Grant. What do you see in him, and what do you think he can add to this team's roster in Tokyo?
Well, his versatility. He's an athlete. He's long. I think length is an important ingredient when you're looking at players who play certain positions. He's become, really a good scorer. I think he averaged over 21 a game this year. So versatility is the key. And by the way, I think that's a trademark of this group. Players who can play a couple of positions, some of them even three positions. So I think he fits in just like a glove. And I think we will have a lot of depth on this team because of that versatility.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you, Jerry. Now we'll go with Mark, and next up, Jerry Tipton.
Hey, Jerry. A couple of New York questions. How surprised were you, Kevin Durant, with all his injury stuff going on, still really wanted to play here? And also Julius Randle, where did he fit in? I mean, you talked about Jeremy getting the nod and Kevin Love, and Julius had a pretty good second team All-NBA year. I was just wondering where Julius fit in there.
Regardless of who you select, there's always a few names that come up regarding why weren't they there rather than someone else. The process of looking at players and following players, Randall, by way of example, was right there. He was one of our considerations, especially when some of the injuries took place and we lost a few players. He had a great year this year. He really did, and he's come a long way. I guess the best reason to say why Kevin Love as an extra big was because of his international experience. Yes, it's true. He hasn't played much of anything over these last couple of years, but the skills that he does bring to the table, the commitment that he's made regarding physical conditioning, he's a versatile guy up front who can rebound and hit shots. Who is to say how many minutes people are going to play? You're not playing 12 players. And so it was a matter of filling out the roster with role players. I think back to our first Olympic team in '08, where we selected some players who are not frontline guys, but they really had a role. I'm thinking of guys like Michael Redd coming off the bench as a shooter. And we had others who had a specific role. So Randall was close. The choice was made by our staff. And so that's what we're going with. I'm sorry, you mentioned one other player.
Kevin, I mean, also an injury type season for him and just finished the playoffs, still wanted to be there.
Yes.
I mean, how impressed or surprised were you that he said, I want to play?
Well, this guy is a very, very special individual, in my opinion. I met him when he was a freshman at Texas and thinking about leaving school and going into the draft. And I remember meeting him at the Final Four and invited him to come to our training camp. And his eyes were as big as you can imagine. He was so excited. He said, I'll be there. And so he's always had this great enthusiasm for playing USA basketball, for playing the game of basketball. He's been in my opinion, a real warrior. I love the guy as a player. I love him as a person. And the fact that he stepped up as he did to commit himself didn't surprise me. I was very, very pleased because he's a very, very important part of our potential success.
Thanks, Jerry.
Mm-hmm.
Jerry, go ahead with your question, and next up will be on deck will be Joe Vardone.
Yeah, hi, Jerry.
Hey, Joe.
I cover Kentucky for the newspaper in Lexington, and I wanted to ask you how you think Devin Booker and Bam Adebayo can impact with the team.
Well, each will impact the team differently. Booker has developed into a real star, in my opinion. And it's an incredible story when you think that he never started in college and he's become the player he has. I'm hopeful that this injury, the broken nose, is not going to be an impactful situation for him. I felt he was better in the second game with the mask than he was the first, and yet he ripped it off because he was so uncomfortable. We had an experience with Joe Johnson a few years back when he was playing for us with the mask situation, and it does take some adjustment. And hopefully Devin will be able to get over that hump. But there's so many parts of his game now where he can contribute. I'm very excited and happy for him to get the opportunity. Bam, we've always liked. He's a young, athletic guy. He can run the court. He's a shot blocker. He plays above the rim. And so, a young guy like that is very, very important. Everyone has a role, and he has a specific job to do, and I'm sure he'll do it well.
Do those two guys fit the new blood that you said, a team needs?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think every team needs some newcomers, and if they're young, athletic guys who can play, obviously that's a big part of it. But it's a youthfulness, it's a exuding confidence. It's a whole bunch of things that newcomers can bring to you, and I think they fall in that category for sure.
Thanks a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Jerry. Joe, go ahead with your question, please.
Hey, Jerry.
Yes, sir.
Talking about Booker, and you've also got Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday, and all three of those guys could be going to the finals. Booker already broke his nose. God forbid something else happens. But so my question would be, what are the rules this year for roster and being able to replace a guy if he has to back out for whatever reason?
Well, there's much more flexibility this time around than ever in the past. In the past, you had to have your roster in by a particular date. And once that happened, you had no ability to replace players. Fortunately, all of the powers that be, and I'm referring to the International Olympic Committee, FIBA, et cetera, they understood. because of COVID, because of the compactfulness of the two seasons, because of injuries, we needed flexibility. And so I won't be specific on the date, that is the drop dead date, but there's much more flexibility to replace someone. To respond to your question regarding replacement, we knew all along that we might be in a situation where a few players would not be able to be in our training camp and would be available at the very last minute in Tokyo. When I say last minute, just days before. It's interesting. Booker called me, maybe a month ago to express his great desire to be a part of the Olympic thing. And I knew that just because of the relationship. But I didn't have to say a word. He said, if we get to the finals and we go all the way, I'll be on a plane the next day and I'll be there. Doesn't matter. Well, when you're young, you can think that way. And so the two guys at Milwaukee, they feel the same way. As it turns out, we have 9 players who are free from that situation. We have 3 who might be on a plane the day after the finals, if in fact Milwaukee and Phoenix get to the finals. So we've been on hold, waiting to see how this all would play out and who would be available and who wouldn't be available. So it could be worse, in terms of unavailability of people. But to have 9, I guess one option is we're going to have 9 players for the first game against France. That's the worst case scenario. Second case scenario is we have a couple of replacement players. Number 3, that those 3 players are going to be there, whether it's 24 or 48 hours before game 1, they'll be there in uniform, ready to play. My guess is all 3 of these guys are going to be who will want to play, and they're going to do everything they can to make that happen.
And then quickly, you mentioned Grant Hill at the top. Is he going to be there with you guys? Is he going to be an active participant in this and go to Tokyo and see how this all works?
No, he will not be in Tokyo. He will be in Vegas. It's really a tight ship as we get to Tokyo. Our group, our traveling party has been reduced to a bare minimum. So we have our players, our staff, our coaches, and there wasn't any opportunity for Grant even to get credentials for Tokyo. That's just the way it is. These are the things we have to adjust to. The other things I would tell you is that Grant has been around us over the years at our training camps, and because of relationships with myself, with, of course, Coach K, his coach in college, he's very aware. There's been a lot of conversation. There'll be plenty more of conversation. And it's not rocket science. It really isn't. It's all about relationships. And he's very good at relationships. So I feel very confident in passing this on to Grant Hill.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
We'll go next to Casey Hodel and then to Jason Dumas. I'm sorry. Casey, go ahead.
Thank you. Damian Lillard making the team. I know you guys have had him in the system for a while, never got a chance to actually get onto the actual Olympic team. So 1, I was curious your thoughts on Damian and having him on the team this year. And 2, there was some reporting that he was instrumental in maybe getting some other guys to sign on earlier. So I'm curious if you could speak to that as well, Jerry.
Sure. Damian came very close to being with us a few years ago, and I think he was disappointed that it didn't happen. And there's always some disappointed people, but he handled it gracefully in a very professional way. And I was always hopeful that we would have an opportunity to re-engage. And of course, this is the time we're re-engaging. He's another one that's just had an incredible career. When I say he's a big time scorer, that's an understatement. I'd love to have him on our team at any time. And so I'm very, very pleased that he will be a big part of our efforts. In terms of his calls to other players, it's interesting. Sometimes we're not aware of who's calling whom. I do remember over the years when I got commitments from a few players, they started talking among themselves. That always happens. And so I'm very happy that he chose to do that from what I've been told. And so it takes a team effort. And in this case, it takes players to participate as well as coaches and management.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Jason, you're up, and on deck will be Christos.
Hey, Jerry, Jason Dumas. I work for
Hey, Jason.
Crown Force Sports in San Francisco. Two quick questions. First, obviously, there's a Warriors flavor, on the roster and staff with Steve and Draymond. I guess how important was it to get a guy like Draymond back on board? He has that USA pedigree with a medal before, and obviously he's just kind of a vocal leader. And then what do you think Steve can bring to the staff as well?
Well, let's start with Steve. He brings a lot to the staff. He's cerebral. Whenever we have conference calls, staff having talk about players or strategy, etc. He has a lot to offer. And so I have great respect for what he brings to the table as part of our staff. And Pop is the kind of guy, he gives his assistants leeway. He gives them opportunity to really participate. This is not a one-man show. And so Steve is a big part of that. As far as Draymond Green is concerned, in conversation with Steve, his opinion is he's as good a big man defender as there is in basketball. And it doesn't matter how big he's defending against. He's as smart as they come defensively. He's aggressive. He just knows how to play. And so much of what he does doesn't reflect itself in numbers in terms of a stat sheet. He's a winner. He's a competitor. He has a toughness that you must have on every team, and he can flat out defend. So I think you'll see him matched up against a lot of big guys we'll be playing against. The preponderance of the individuals on foreign teams or international teams is that they have a lot of bigs who can play. And so you just don't throw a big in there because there's a big he's defending. You put someone in there who knows how to defend a big, and that's Draymond Green.
Right. And then another quick question. You mentioned at the beginning of the call how the Olympics being pushed back a year affected the pool with people with injuries or body recovery. Did Steph Curry fall into that category? Because I know there is obviously interest in both sides. Steph said in his career he would like to get a gold medal, and USA always, has extended the invite. Was that the case with Steph?
For sure. And I'm disappointed he didn't have the opportunity to play with us on an Olympic team. He did. That was a big thing in his checklist he wanted to do. And unfortunately, injuries have played a role in his career or a part in his career in his inability to participate with us. I think he too has had a tremendous career, and it would have been nice to see him in the Olympic situation, but it wasn't meant to be. But we thank him for what he has done for us. One of the teams that I loved that we put together was in 2010 for the World Championships in Istanbul, Turkey. After the Olympic win in 2008 in China, we had 12 new players for the games in Istanbul for the World Championships, and so many of them went on to have incredible careers. Think about it. I think 3 of them became MVPs, but the players on that team were Westbrook, Curry, Rose, Love, Durant. It was an incredible group of young guys and a few veterans that were just embarking on their careers in the NBA. And of course, we won, and we won big. And that was as good a team as. It was more fun to put that team together maybe than any other because it was challenging to come up with 12 young guys, but it proved a point in terms of the depth and the continuing flow of talent that comes into the NBA. And it's never stopped when you think about it. When you ask the question, who's going to replace so-and-so? Well, I'm not sure who the name is, but there will be somebody to replace them. It's just a matter of time. So the young stars just continue to flow.
Thank you, Jerry. Christos, and then on deck will be Gary Washburn.
Hello, Mr. Colangelo. Christos from Greece. Hope you're doing well.
Yes,
Thank you
sir.
for your time. I would like to ask you, if you look back in 2019's World Cup, what was the biggest lesson for Team USA? And how big was the poise of the players this summer to join national team for the upcoming Olympic Games?
Well, we've always given players a voice in terms of whatever we're trying to accomplish, because it is a team effort. And, some players earned the platform just by how they've performed, how they've conducted themselves. And some of them have been acknowledged as being really good basketball minds. And it's always about relationships. Players want to be with players that they enjoy being with and playing with. So to me, that's a very, very important part of our process.
Thank you. Gary Washburn, and then we'll do Andrew Lombardi up next.
Hey, Jerry, how are you?
Hey, Gary.
The fact that there was no camp to kind of choose teams, usually it's kind of you get a bunch of guys together and then they play and they work out, then you choose the 12. How difficult was that to just kind of select guys? Because the process was different, because there's been no summer. And then secondly, I just wanted to ask about Jason Tatum, and he was one of the first to commit, I believe, and what you like about him on this team.
Let's go to, we had to adjust. In other words, it wasn't normal, it wasn't typical, but these are the ramifications of a travesty that we went through with COVID worldwide. When you lose millions of people, and everything's going to be affected. And so it's a small thing that USA basketball didn't have the same opportunity that it had in the past. We're thankful that we have the opportunity to come through all of that and still field a team and participate in the Olympics, even though it's going to be different. The fact that there won't be any support for us in terms of an American crowd or contingent of people, we won't have that. We won't have spouses. We won't have family. It's very limited. But the way I'm looking at this is, if this is the way it is, these are the cards dealt. When we leave Las Vegas on the 19th and arrive in Tokyo, we're just a family. We're going to be in a hotel, a practice court, and games, 6 games, and we're there on a mission. And we're going to be in that foxhole together. And so that's the feeling I have. And that's something that I believe everyone understands. As far as Tatum is concerned, a couple of years ago, we lost in the World Cup. And that was disappointing. But we had 2 injuries that cost us. One of them was to Tatum. I think he's very, very important to this team. I think he's continued to develop. He was one of the early players who reached out to me, and I mean months ago, to express his commitment and his desire to participate on the Olympic team. His length, his scoring ability. There are a number of guys on this roster, the Olympic roster, who are capable of going off for 40, as they have in NBA games. So I like him a lot. I think he can be very, very vital and a main guy for us.
Next up is Andrew Lobardi, and then we'll go with the famous Casey Johnson.
Hey, Jerry, it's Andrew.
Hey, Andrew.
Going back to the 2019, coming off of that, and this is Coach Pop's first training camp since then. what is this training camp going to be about? Because like you said, only 9 out of the 12 might be there the whole time. How difficult is it going to be for Pop to get this training camp, and what's at stake for him as well to try to, get this team to gel so quickly coming off of 2019?
Sure. Well, let me just offer that we're going to have players to fill in training camp. And some of them are players who are playing elsewhere around the world who have the availability to participate if we need help. Secondly, we do have a bunch of young guys coming in the select team. And so we're going to have enough players to make it all work. What's at stake? Anytime you take on a responsibility, you're willing to take the challenge on, there's always a lot at stake. My attitude, and I know Pop feels the same way. We're representing our country. We have a job to do. We have to get people ready to play and have the right mindset about what we're going there for and what our mission is all about. And he's such an organized guy. His practices will be extraordinary in that sense. But he always balances, the work and the effort that goes into it with keeping people healthy. And that's very, very important. That's a tenuous, sensitive kind of a thing. Personally, I always feel a responsibility when we have players from the NBA representing us to be very, very protective of these players and never put them in a situation that they shouldn't be in as it relates to their health or injury, etc. Sometimes things happen that are beyond your control. And so I couldn't be more pleased with Pop replacing Coach K, where we had a great deal of success under his supervision and leadership, and for Pop to be the new guy, the new sheriff in town. And I'm very confident that Pop's going to do an incredible job.
Thank you.
We'll go with Casey Johnson, and then next up would be James Ozarski.
Jerry, hope you're doing well.
Doing fine, Casey. How are you?
I'm well, thanks. Feeling a little pressure after that Craig Miller introduction, but no. One thing that was apparent to us here in Bulls land was just how exuberant and excited Zach was for this opportunity. He never hid it. He made it no secret to us, and anytime we asked him about it, how much did that level of excitement and engagement, intrigue and interest you guys, and beyond his talent, lead to his selection, particularly in light of Gary Washburn's question about how you guys didn't really have a, tryout camp, so to speak. So how much did that play a factor in his role, and what can he add to this roster?
Well, the one thing we had going for us is that we've had, I'll say, 2 years to look at players we had some interest in. Just watching games and watching players develop and all the things that have happened regarding injuries and so on and so contract situations. So, Zach's come a long way in terms of his game. He's a, freak athlete in that sense, capable of going off and putting some big numbers out there, but he's full of enthusiasm. I wasn't that long ago when he and I spoke on the phone. He almost jumped through the phone. He was so excited about the opportunity. And I love that, when you have a few people who maybe didn't expect to be there, who are just so exuberant about the opportunity, they add a lot of juice to the whole situation. And that's where he falls. I think he'll make a contribution for whatever amount of time he may get. He's going to be there ready to go. And he's going to push some people, and I like that.
Thanks, Jerry.
Mm-hmm.
We'll go to James Ozarski, and then next up is Rafiat. I hope I got that right. Lewison. James?
Hi, Jerry. Jim Ozarski, Milwaukee
James.
Journal Sentinel. You mentioned a couple of times about...
You broke up on me.
James, we're We're losing you here. Well,
Good. You mentioned
James, why don't you try to get a better connection? We'll come back to you when you do, and we'll move on to Raphael. Is that right?
It's pronounced Rafiq was on.
Raphael, nice to meet you. Go ahead,
about
please.
Drew Holiday, adding Drew Holiday to the team.
I'm sorry. Yes, go ahead. We'll go back to James. James, we'll come back to you.
This is Rafiq with Nothing But That Sports Talk. Congratulations on assembling the Team USA team, Mike. I just want to ask you, how different will this USA team be compared to the last three rosters that won gold medal at the Olympics?
Well, each team has had its own unique personality and different leaders on each team. And there's been some carryover, obviously. And so I think it's important to have continuity. You know, Durant brings continuity for sure. And his leadership is really critical and important. But I think the personality of each team will be in the process of being formed in training camp. And there's only 6 games we play in the Olympics in Tokyo. So you don't have a great deal of time. You have to depend on people you trust, that you believe in, that are committed to get the job done and do basically what the coaching staff is looking to accomplish. And so there's not a great deal of similarity from the 08 team to the team this year. Maybe a little bit more from the 2012 team, and certainly the 16 team. Time takes its toll. Players have their run and have their experience, and then there's new people on the block. And that's what we have this year. There's a number of new players getting this opportunity, and it's refreshing to have that situation take place.
And another thing, I just want to know, with Kevin Durant being back on the roster, I know you probably touched upon this earlier.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think? How do you think it's going to help his career in the NBA when he plays next season?
I'm not sure anything's going to help him in his career next season that will come out of this experience. What it is a love for the game and fulfilling a continuing dream of being on that court and playing for all the marbles and trying to get a gold medal. That's the competitiveness in him. So if you could raise his level of competitiveness any more than what it is today, that's unbelievable. That's over the top. So I think it's more about him fulfilling his desire to play the game that he loves as much as he does.
Thank you. We'll go to Donnie Woods next, and then on deck is Dwayne Rankin.
Donnie Woods with World Exposure Report. Jerry, thank you very much for everything that you've done for basketball and for the USA. We do appreciate that. 2 questions. Number 1, what made Grant Hill the best choice to kind of take over? And number 2, with you leaving, what young stars would you like to see in future USA teams?
Well, first of all, Grant Hill. Grant Hill is, he's bright, he's articulate, he's relational. If you check the boxes for people, he checks all the boxes. He's well respected. He's got a terrific resume in terms of basketball, and he's always been open-minded. And so he knows that he always has access to people like me to be of help whenever he thinks he needs help. And if he wants to do it on his own, he's more entitled to do that. I think there comes a time in life when you need to step aside and give someone else the opportunity to carry on, because you come to the realization you're not going to be around forever. And it's important for continuity purposes to have people in place who can carry the load. And I couldn't be more thrilled with Grant Hill. What was the other question? I'm sorry.
With you leaving, what new young stars would you like to see compete on future teams?
Well, I want to see the best young stars, and that is yet to be determined. You know, we know who the young players are today, just based on the this season and maybe last season. But there'll be a few more stars, you know, coming out before the next Olympics. There'll be a whole new set of names. Some of them are guys playing this year, and some of them aren't. We don't even know who they might be. So I wouldn't speculate on who the next group is, but I know this for a fact. After all the years I've been in the NBA and in basketball, whenever you think about how do you replace a Bill Russell or an Oscar Robertson or a Michael Jordan or even a Kobe and so forth, there's always players coming along. It's one of the great things about our game. It's been a never stopping pipeline of athletes and players who just get better and better. So the future for basketball in our country, in my opinion, and for future Olympics, etc., is very bright.
Thanks, Jerry.
Mm-hmm.
Next up, we have Dwayne Rankin, and then we'll go with Chris Mathias.
Thank you. Appreciate you doing this for us, Jerry.
Hey, Dwayne.
Hey, how you doing, sir?
Good.
That's a couple of things. Yes, sir. One, a couple of things. First, you mentioned that, you know, the three guys that could be in the finals, and Chris Middleton, obviously Drew Holiday and Devin, if they get over there, say the next day after the finals, which I think the last game 7, if there's a game 7, be the 22nd.
Correct.
You guys don't play your preliminary game until the 25th. So I guess that does give them at least a couple of days.
They would get there on the 23rd. Think about it.
Right.
You know, if you were an old person like me, I'd need a couple of days to just get my legs, but they're young. And chances are they're going to bounce back real quick. They'll sleep on a plane. That's nothing new for a lot of us. So I'm not really worried that much if it's the three that we just talked about, because those two teams get to the finals. I think all three of them are ready to go. In fact, they all said that. They'll be on a plane the next day, and we're making arrangements to make that happen.
And just a quick follow, obviously Chris Paul is someone that was in the mix for this, and just maybe take us through the process of him wanting to be, and then it not happening, and then obviously him not committing.
Well, you know, I've known Chris a long time. It seems like just a couple of years ago, we were in Beijing together, and he was playing as a young player in the Olympics. And I said something to him. I remember the two of us were going somewhere, and I said, you know, Chris, you're going to have an opportunity potentially to be on 4 Olympic teams. And it didn't work out that way for whatever reasons. I think it's amazing that he is playing as well as he is at as high a level as he is at his age. And I would have loved to have had Chris Paul for a whole bunch of reasons. He's one of my favorite guys and players. He's an incredible leader. And then he comes down, you know, I thought he was out until I heard from him. And he wanted to reconsider that. So I just waited. And then unfortunately, COVID played another role this time and kind of knocked him out. And so we just had to move on. And it was as simple as that. I know he's pulling for us, and he knows I'm pulling for him.
Thanks, Jerry. Appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Chris, you're up, and then we'll go back to James, see if we can get you on this time.
All right, Jerry, I appreciate you doing this. Can I just ask you a little bit about, I mean, you guys rolled into Las Vegas way back in the day, and just kind of the role that Las Vegas has played in the building of Team USA and helping it kind of establish a training camp home and that sort of thing.
Well, Las Vegas became the basketball center in the country during the off season with the tournaments, you know, the youth tournaments, and everything else that was going on. The summer league became bigger and better each year. And it just seemed like a natural. It was certainly a place that would be appealing to our players, whoever would be coming in for different camps and also training camps. And so it just seemed natural. And the people there were very aggressive, those who were in charge of promotion for the city. And so we had great partnerships over the years. The Wynn at the time was our headquarter hotel. Steve and Elaine Wynn were very instrumental in making that happen. Of course, we've moved on to MGM. Time marches on. And so there's a new relationship for the NBA and USA Basketball with MGM. And that's an exciting new experience. So Las Vegas has turned out to be an incredible sports town, as evidenced by the facilities that are being built and the teams that are there now in hockey and in football, et cetera. It's interesting. I always thought basketball might be the first pro team, pro league to get to Las Vegas. It didn't turn out that way.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Jerry, I'm going to ask the question for James. It was, he wanted to know about selecting Drew Holiday. He was an additional set. He was part of the additional set of finalists. And what did you like about Drew and what ultimately led to his selections?
Well, a great guy, a terrific defender. He's received NBA recognition for his defensive prowess. And I think he's a contributor. He'll do whatever is asked of him. He's that kind of player. He's kind of a glue player is the way I would describe him. And very excited to be part of our roster. And I'm looking forward to getting to know him a lot more as we join up, if not sooner, but certainly in Tokyo.
We'll go next to Stacy and then to Pago Franklin will be on deck.
Hey, Jerry, thank you so much for your time. I was just
Hi,
curious
Stacy.
to know, what are you expecting the fans' reaction to be like when you get to Tokyo, and how are you hoping people will receive you and Team USA as you all play overseas this year?
You know, Stacy, I can't really even project how it's going to be. I can tell you this is an experience that we had when Kobe was with us, and we got over there before the Olympics in 2008 to Beijing. We played games in some other cities in China, preliminary games on our way to Beijing. And literally, we pulled into towns like at 1 or 2 in the morning after getting off a plane, and there were thousands of people lined up on the streets waiting for our buses to show up wherever we might have been. And a big part of that following was Kobe. Kobe had established himself in the Far East as a bigger than life kind of an individual. So that was then, and this is now. You know, the circumstances regarding COVID and the access or lack of access to the players, which is going to be the case. It's not that we're in a bubble, but it's just like it's not going to be normal. And so I can't project how it's going to be. Might even be a little lonesome, not sure.
Thank you, Jerry.
And then if I could follow up, is there like any advice that you're going to be able to share with the players, or any stories that you hope to share with the players to maybe comfort them and guide them as they go along with their Olympics experience as you all play overseas this year?
Yeah, that's a good question. I said, well, first of all, because of age, I've got a lot of stories, so I can keep them occupied for a while. But we need to keep ourselves busy, staying busy, and enjoying kind of one another and doing things that we can do. You know, we'll be limited, but it's important that we give our players a good experience as best we can, as much as we can control it. You don't want them just sitting around twiddling their thumbs in a hotel lobby. That's not going to fly. And so, yeah, we're working very hard on coming up with ways to keep ourselves busy, occupied, and alert.
Thank you. We're going to finish up with these final 3 questions, Jerry. Next up is Fago Franklin, then Yoko, you'll be up next.
Hey, Jerry, how you doing today?
Fine. How are you?
I'm well, can't complain. What does it mean to you that you have gotten coaches like Coach Pop and Steve Kerr to give wisdom and knowledge to some of the players that lack that Olympics experience?
Well, I think it's always a plus when you can have a staff that has a track record, has their own record of experiences that they can impart upon the players. And you need a staff that can communicate with the players. And, you know, Lloyd Pierce, who's one of our assistant coaches, and Jay Wright from Villanova, they all bring something to the table. It's not just Steve Kerr and Coach Pop. It's a group who all have involvements with the players. They all have roles. And so I feel very good about our staff. I think it's a terrific staff, and I think we're blessed to have them all.
Thank you, Jerry.
Mm-hmm.
Yoko, you're up, and then we'll finish with Wilson Tarfey.
Hello, Jerry. How are you?
Hi, Yoko.
Your first tournament that you assembled a team for was the 2006 World Championship in Saitama, Japan. What was experience? What's your memory from that experience in Japan? And also that you're going back to the same arena this time for Tokyo Olympics. What's your thoughts on that? It's like coming to full circle.
Yes, that's interesting. Well, first of all, I want to say that I'm going to turn the clock way back, that in 1975 and 76, I actually coached an NBA All-Star team against an All-Star ABA All-Star team in Japan. And we toured. It was the first time Japan had seen professional basketball players. And so that was a real good experience for all of us, certainly for me, in getting acquainted with the country and the people and so forth. And I always enjoyed that immensely. I brought the Phoenix Suns to Tokyo in 93, 94. We also had the Utah Jazz, Barkley, Malone, fighting it out with the rest of the crew. And that was another great experience. So I found the people in Japan to love the game. They were very appreciative, very respectful. And so every experience has been a good one. Now in 2006, to your question, I remember being in a few different places where I think it was Sapporo, when we played the opening round. It was there that people like Carmelo and Dwayne Wade and LeBron James and others got together and started talking about maybe joining forces in the NBA on a team. That was the initiation of players doing just that. We lost to Greece in a game that kind of stuck with me and Coach K in a very big way, a big disappointment. That was then, this is now. We can't look back and say, oh, this is where we lost the game. No, I don't think that way. I would probably think of it this way. We lost a game here. We're going to make sure that never happens again.
And your thoughts on going back to the same arena?
I think basically the answer I just gave you is that, an arena is an arena. And, it's still 94 by 50 in terms of the court. You have to compete, you have to win in order to be successful. So no problem with going back to the same arena.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And we'll finish things up with Wilson Tarpe.
Good afternoon, Jerry.
Hi, Wilson. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for your time. My one question was just if you could talk about the decision that went into selecting Bradley Beal of the Washington Wizards.
always had a lot of interest in Bradley Beal. And I think he's a classic example of a guy who has really upgraded his game. He's gotten better and better each year. That's my 2 cents worth on him. I think he's a big time scorer, another guy capable of big numbers. He competes. I think he's a great guy. I think he'll fit like a glove on this team and gives us that additional firepower. And we have a lot of that on this team, on this roster.
Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Jerry, thank you very much, taking an hour, almost an hour out of your day. Appreciate it very much. If you have any follow-up questions, free to reach out to the USA Basketball Communications team, and we'll get back to you. Thanks all, and we'll make this recording online, usab.com.